All right. Welcome, everybody. This is Rob Sanchez. I'm here with John Kiernan. John, we're talking today about something that's a little bit outside of the ordinary. And so I'd like to have you kind of start by saying a little bit about what are you doing when it comes to theme music and how did you get into that?
Oh boy, yeah. For those of me who know me in different walks of life, you hear me talk about different things that I do. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the work I do in wrestling entrance theme music. So, if you think about professional wrestling, or you think about, let's say, MMA or boxing, and you hear these people coming out to music, some of these companies are using music that's copywritten. A lot of the music that I work with, though, is original music for wrestlers. So when they walk out, they have this presentation, they have this image that they want to deliver to the crowd. The music that you hear is the music that I write. And for the companies that I've worked with, I always like to tell people that I've worked with companies such as New Japan, All Elite Wrestling, MLW, basically any company outside of WWE. That's not by design. It's just to give the scope of some of the wrestlers that I've worked with. It's been everybody up into that. I've been doing it for about 2 years now, 2.5 years, and I've written about 120 themes up to this point. It's been really cool to work with so many awesome wrestlers and so many awesome talents.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated by this, and it's like not a typical thing that people think about. So I'd love to know, where did you get the idea, and then how did it kind of happen the first time?
Yeah, so I've been a musician, a professional musician now for about 15 years or so. My wife and I met in music school. I played in bands for years. So basically, a lot, probably more of my life has been music involved than not music involved, right? And I had wanted to do music for film, for video games, for commercials, things like that. And I've been grateful to have been able to have done so, and I continue to. But I was actually running a wrestling podcast in 2019, 2020 with some buddies of mine. And we were thinking of different ways to start, promoting the show outside of just, hey, I got a podcast where we talk about wrestling, go for it. And we were thinking about some of the different skills that we had. And one of the hosts was like, hey, you write music. Have you ever thought about writing themes for wrestlers? And it's funny, I never had, as much as I am a wrestling fan and as much as I'm a fan of wrestling entrance themes. So for me, it was one of those things where it was like, oh, that's actually a really cool idea. I have no idea how to do this. I have no idea who to reach out to. And we would interview people on our show, like different wrestlers. And some of those wrestlers, I had told myself, you know what? Let me shoot an email to them. Let me shoot a DM to them on social media and see if they can give me some insight as to how this would go, how they usually do it, and that nature. And the first batch of wrestlers that I reached out to, all wrestlers that I've worked with have been super nice, super awesome. And they were just telling me how that part of the industry works, how the way that people acquire music with different companies or just being an independent wrestler going to all different promotions. And a few of them were like, hey, if you want to write something for us, we'd love it if you did it. And I'd always say that, when you work with somebody who's asking you for the first time, hey, I'd love to do this for you. As a wrestler, you're probably just like, all right, cool, they're just gonna throw something together, it'll be fine, whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm really happy that the first couple of people that I worked with loved the music that I wrote for them. And a lot of them still use it to this day, years later.
Yeah.
Um, so for me, it was like that was the start, working with, let's say, just two or three people. And over time, both through wrestlers recommending me and by me reaching out to a lot of talents, I've been able to work with a lot of them, a lot of different people. And through that, it's been just, you create one piece of music, you get referrals. You create another piece of music, you start reaching out, and the ball just continues to roll forward. And I'm
Yeah.
I'm really grateful for that, because again, it's like you said, it's not something super common that you hear,
Yeah.
and there are very few of us who isolate to just that. But with the
Yeah. How
talent
how
of
big is the competitive field? Is it like you and two other people, or like what's the
yeah,
Yeah.
I would say this. I don't ever look at anybody as competition, and that's in any kind of the
Mhm.
businesses that I run, right?
Yeah.
If you exist and a thing exists, you're going to have lots of people, right? You just always do the best work that you can do. But the thing is, I would say that people that are known for doing it, there's not quite a huge pool. I would probably say like people that would brand themselves, like I'm branding myself wrestling entrance theme song composer, probably in like the 20s, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? If that.
Okay.
And there are people that are original artists that write their own music and just happen to have written a lot of music for wrestlers too. So those also exist. But in terms of
Mhm.
just like people that really say, my goal is to write original entrance music, there
Yeah.
definitely aren't many of us, and
Yeah.
at least as many that do it to the frequency that, let's say, myself or someone like AEW's Mikey Ruckus do.
Mhm. Oh, that's amazing. So when you're looking at a wrestler, do you hear the music when you see them? Like, do you see, okay, this is the persona, this is the person, and there's like something that's calling to you to write about, or is it more like a branding exercise where you're saying this is who they want to be, and you're writing into a future persona? How does it kind of lay out a little bit, or does that matter at the with the level of the talent and how established they are?
It's a combination of both, and it could be one or the other. Some wrestlers who have come from, let's say, bigger companies and who know a little bit more of who they are and want to take that character, basically already predefined, and continue to develop on that character. We start usually with, okay, cool, this is who you were. Is this who you want to continue to be? The question I ask everybody, whether they've wrestled for millions of people or tens of people, is who do you want to portray that you are, right? There are some wrestlers that I've worked with that have worked for large companies who they would say, here's the theme music that I want. And those composers would listen and say, okay, cool. And they'd come up with whatever they wanted. And it wouldn't be really related to what the person
Mhm.
delivered to them. But when I would start working with them, they would say, oh, yeah, the stuff that you heard before in this other company, that really wasn't who I am or what I want to be portrayed as. And they'll start sending me references, start telling me their story, and
Yeah.
then I'm able to create something that works more for them because it's a one-on-one basis. So like, this is me. This is who I want to be. I've always said that there are some talents that are probably a little bit, I don't want to say easier, but more defined to write for than others. There are some talents, for example, that visually and story-wise, they know a little bit more who they are, and there's a little bit more of provers, right? So, for
Mhm.
example, I wrote for somebody who I could bring up a lot, but there
Yeah.
was one person that I wrote for that their name, what was their nickname? King of the Ocean, I believe it was, right? So that already starts striking a lot of different feels, a lot of different vibes.
Yeah.
And with that, you started thinking of, okay, cool, maybe we can do some things where we have waves at the beginning, right? Like the Stone Cold Glass Breaking, we would have waves at the beginning of his. There are some sounds that make sense for that. But then there are some wrestlers who it's just like, I'm a wrestler, right? I'm a fighter. Okay, cool. We need to dive a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah.
Like, what makes you unique from the other wrestlers here, too? That's where kind of hearing their story and hearing who they are, everybody's unique in that way. If you just say,
Mhm.
I'm a fighter or I'm a wrestler, okay, fine. But if you really get into
Yeah,
that
and
person's
then just
story,
play Eye of a Tiger and we're done.
right, exactly. Then we go home and there you go. And
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, we start seeing that when you really dive into somebody's story and who make and what makes them them, that's when you really get all these really good nuggets, and that's when you start really pulling out what separates this wrestler from this wrestler from this wrestler.
Is there anything unique about the entrance theme music that say like I have friends who do movies, I have friends who do games and they're very specific skill sets like matching frame rates and matching like how do you loop and build in a game and so on. What's unique about the entrance theme music? Is there some aspect that you have to be really careful of that's like a technical aspect?
That's a really, really good question. Funny enough, it's not a question I've been asked before, and I can answer this in kind of a technical term too, right? Um, for some of the other mediums that you spoke about, right? For TV, for film, for video games, things like that, you have different technical considerations you have to think of. If you're writing commercial music, you can write a full song, but then you have to be able to write a 30-second version, a 15-second, a 60-second. If you're writing for video games, you have to write sometimes horizontally, meaning like you can have a piece of music where it has all of the parts have to work independently, whether you're hearing
Yeah.
just the drums or just the guitar or just the
Yeah.
synth or just that kind of thing. Um, but when it comes to wrestling entrance themes, what's really cool is a lot of the times I have a fair amount of liberty to write, where the direction we want to go for a full song. But the most important parts usually are within that first 30 and 40 seconds. Usually for me, there has to be within the first 3 seconds something that you know who the wrestler is
Yeah.
before they hit the ring, right? And I always go back to the Stone Cold Steve Austin, the glass shatter, because that's something that everybody remembers, right?
Yeah.
Um, Something like that, or with The Rock, if you smell that whole thing, those are usually the first or second things that I think about that need to be there.
What's that? It's like an audio hook, kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just literally like a quick stinger or like a quick cue, so to
Yeah.
speak, right? Because you can do a full build up in a song, which sounds cool, but when you're listening to a piece of music in your headphones, you could do really whatever you want. If you're
Hmm.
doing it for the medium where, okay, maybe two wrestlers are beating up on one wrestler, then all of a sudden you have to have this music that comes in to signify very quickly, this is what's there and here's who's coming. So there's that, and then
Yeah.
that usual 30 seconds afterwards, 30 to 40 seconds is how long it could take a wrestler to get to the ring, right? There are things that, for example, if a wrestler has a pose that they pose on the top rope, you want to be able to sync the music to that so that they can make
Hmm.
the pose in coordination with the music. Um, After that first 30 seconds or so, I am usually able to, if we decide to go down this road, get really creative, expand it, make a full song. Sometimes because of time or because the wrestler it makes more sense for them. Sometimes we will loop an A section to a B section over and over, right? It just might make
Hmm.
sense in that way.
Yeah. I
So,
imagine that's gonna
or
depend on the venue and like how they've choreographed the entrance and so on, whether or not you're using a longer version or a shorter version,
yeah.
or are the sound teams sophisticated enough to like respond in real time? How does that typically play out? Is
Yeah, it
Yeah.
depends. One theme that I go back to that I really got proud of being able to lock that in with was Mercedes Martinez's theme. She is the Ring of Honor Women's Champion right now, and when it comes to that, one thing that she wanted specifically was she wanted gunshots in her theme,
Hmm.
and which is really cool. It sounds awesome when you hear it, but the thing is when she goes to the ring, she hits the ring a couple times, like, with her hands, and then she takes her mask off, she goes up on the top rope, things like that. The way that the transitions work from one to another, or from one section to another, are where those come in a bunch of times. For
Yeah.
me, what that means is if she's doing AEW, where the entrance ramp is longer, she can milk the crowd for a little bit more for TV. She can go to a venue where there's 150, 200 people and the ramp is shorter. She has different places in the music that have that same cue where she can do those same motions. To me, being
Mm,
able to
got
build
it.
those in and throughout the song makes it easier for her to present herself, as opposed to, like, okay, cool, now there's this whole 30-second part that has nothing to do with you hitting it and it doesn't make sense, you know?
Yeah.
So that's one thing I've always kept into account too.
Okay, interesting. So you're building the music so it's flexible and malleable almost as well, so that it
Exactly. Yeah.
matches. Yeah, interesting. Um, what what kind of can happen from here? Do you think? So you've written for 120 people. How many wrestlers are out there, and like how much growth is there in the industry as it stands now, and then how much is going to be just like rising to the top of the craft?
Yeah, I would say that wrestling is in a very healthy place right now. With the creation of the company AEW, now there's another company in the US that has the financial backing and the presence that something like WWE did. And
Hmm.
again, a rising tide rises all boats, right?
Yep.
So for that, there's so many other promotions, both small, medium, and large, such as those two, both internationally and domestically, that
Hmm.
you have wrestlers that have more places to work, right? So for me, I think that if someone is a wrestler looking to get in the industry, now is a really great time to do so. So to kind of answer the question in a couple of different ways, wrestlers don't just have to be with one company now in order to create their own way and build a brand around themselves. They can go to multiple promotions. They can
Hmm.
go to one of the larger promotions. But the thing now is you're starting to see wrestlers who have, instead of it just being like a story within one company, it's a story that carries them over through all different sorts of of all different sorts of companies, right? So you could have a feud that goes between different companies, and all of a sudden they get signed to a big company. These two people are still together. They rekindle that feud. For me, the entrance theme becomes really important in that way because if you think of the entrance theme or if you think of the entrance theme in that way, anytime a wrestler goes somewhere, you know who it is immediately. It's not like, okay, they
Yeah.
wrestle in this promotion and they have a completely different theme than here, than here, than here. Sometimes legally they might not be able to, or sometimes a promotion might say,
Yeah.
so many people think they have the rights and they don't, so we're just going to use our own library. What's been nice for me is I feel like I've done enough music for enough wrestlers where my name has gotten into the eyes and ears of a lot of these promotions. So if they hear, oh, John has done this, or the wrestler has the release form that I send them, these companies are usually like, okay, great, like you can use the music.
Yeah.
So
Um, Interesting. So you also you have to think about a little bit of in the musical identity. Well, maybe this is a question, not a statement. As you're thinking about the identity, are you also thinking, can I build on this for a future group? Like, how does this music evolve with this person and their character as well? Are you looking at like upgrading and responding to their career inside of the music? Or have you gotten to that level yet with some of them?
there's one group that I'm very close with in New Jersey named The Division. And The Division is a group out of New Jersey. There's a couple of different members that I've worked with, and I've also written the theme for the overall group, right?
Hmm.
I think right now there's about 6 or 7 people who are part of it, and they're in different promotions too. Some are, in Ring of Honor, some are in Monster Factory, some are in WWE now. And so there's a lot of different people in that group. But the one thing that I wanted to do with them was I wanted to create their main theme. And then I
Yeah.
wanted to have, if I write themes for anybody else, they all have themes that kind of relate back to that initial theme. So, give you an example. Sloane Jacobs, who's now with WWE, when she was on the Independents, she was going by the Notorious Mimi, and she was with the Division. So if you listen to her theme and then listen to the Division's theme, you could listen to them completely independently and still hear a theme that represents both. But you could listen to them back to back, and you're like, oh, that's Mimi's version of the Division theme. Same with, for example, Rico de la Vega, who's part of that too. His
Hmm.
has a lot more of like a reggaeton Spanish flair, whereas the main version, the Division theme, is a little bit more like heavy rap rock. It has rap vocals, things like that. But you'll hear both of them, and you're like, oh, they're from that group. So for me,
Yeah.
I've always felt that's important. If a wrestler moves on and develops, I think that if they're doing like a full character shift, then okay, cool, we can abandon that. If they want to keep small portions of that, we can always figure out ways to continue that going forward. And I think a lot of people who are successful doing entrance theme songs will key in on that too. A lot of people will probably think about Roman Reigns' theme for WWE, the new one. The original Shield theme had very recognizable guitar hits. When they
Hmm.
created the new theme for Roman Reigns, when he went to be the God Mode mega heel that he is now, you'll still hear little things that come from that make sense in that song. But when you hear them, if you know, you're like, oh, that's the thing. That's from that. So
Yeah.
it's really cool to see that evolution if it makes sense.
Um, are there like related things, related industries and related types of entertainment that you're kind of thinking about bringing into or expanding? I mean, I guess you have video games as an opportunity for people. You have kind of like that esports world. Um, there's, I guess, I think of it as parallel, like lucha libre, which is a little bit parallel to professional wrestling as we know it. Um, are there like things like that are moving in tandem that this can play into, do you think? Or is it kind of a standalone art form?
I think that if you are a composer, you should learn how to write for all different sorts of mediums. So the technical musical standpoint, um, music is music at the end of the day, right? Chords, you build chords the same way no matter what style you do. Rhythm works, beat works all the same way. So I think from a composer technical level, you should learn all these different mediums.
Yeah.
But I think that one thing is thinking about, like you said, like TV, thinking about video games. These are all mediums that are coming through somebody's TV, and the mix that you hear in your studio and in the car might sound a little bit different when you hear them coming live. I remember hearing Tony Nese and Mercedes Martinez's theme on AEW, and I remember hearing the mix in my car and being like, "All right, this is cool. I love this, but okay, when I do the next mix, maybe I'll do this, do some
Yeah,
changes." So from a production standpoint, hearing how these things translate in different places makes a lot of sense to figure out. But
yeah,
I think that the skill sets are translatable into things like video game music and into TV, because when you're writing for a wrestler, ultimately they may get called to do a TV opportunity, and
yeah.
when you do that, that's when you really start to see, okay, cool. Like when the wrestler does their thing, does the score that I created for them, so to speak, match up and make sense when they go live to do this? So I think that
Mhm.
there's definitely parallels closest to TV music and film music. I think with video games, because wrestlers can be such characters and superheroes and supervillains, the kind of music that you write can be very related to what you would hear in a video game.
Yeah. What's kind of the big thing for you right now? Like, what are you looking to do with this, and how do you want this to grow?
Yeah, I just want to keep writing for as many companies and as many wrestlers as I can. I'm grateful to say that I am a little bit in a little bit of a backstock right now, meaning I have a lot of themes and I'm working on them. I'm kind of booked out till about October now, which is
Mhm.
crazy because it's June. Um, how does life work, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But right now, my final deadline with a lot of these wrestlers is October. I still have some that I'm working with through up until there. But yeah, just continue to work in this capacity. Right now, I am the head of director. I am the director of music for original music and themes for the United Wrestling Network. I love working with them. I'm working on some music for Wow Women of Wrestling as well.
Mhm.
I would love to be able to be contracted by some more wrestling companies as well to be the original composer to work with them too. I think I offer a lot of value there, but I'd love to also branch into, again, being the composer for a AAA game company. I would love to do that. Really,
Yeah,
any skills that I can develop or any skills that I can leverage in writing music, I would love to continue developing. So, and be an asset
yeah.
to anyone who wants it. So,
That's good. What's the thing that you kinda hang your hat on right now? Like, what are you really proud of? Or maybe a couple things that you're really proud of?
yeah, hitting that initial milestone of 100 themes was big for me because, and I've told this story a couple times, but there was a point in 2014 when I just released my solo album the year before of Oceans, which will eventually be re-released. And it was very solo instrumental, meaning like, okay, cool. It was like for those who are familiar with the genre, like Andy James, Steve Vai, those kinds of guys, right? And for me, I was coming right out of college, releasing music because I was like, oh, that's kind of what you do, I guess. But when you write solo instrumental music, when you can write everything you want and your audience is all musicians, for me at that time, I felt like everything I do sucks, right? So I was just
Yeah,
like, okay, if I put together a chord progression, if I know that another musician can hear that and go, oh, that's a 251 or something like that, and you just did it in a metal setting, I was like, well, okay, that makes the music that I just wrote seem completely irrelevant. Why do I need to release it? Because someone know, you know what I mean? And so
yeah,
for me, it was a year of music that I was just like, I don't know if I'm going to do this anymore. Like, I don't know. I don't have the passion for it. I'm sitting here at my desk for hours. I don't care and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
And
yeah,
being able to now sit here in 2022 was when I crossed into 100. Yeah, 2022, and be like, now I'm releasing music every week. I'm seeing some of it come out on streaming. I'm seeing people use it all across the globe. I'm connecting with awesome musicians and awesome wrestlers and awesome people in the industry all around the globe. Um, I have magazines that are doing features on me, and I'm not saying this to brag or anything, not at
yeah,
all. I don't want it to come off as that, but from somebody sitting in their studio in 2014, basically about to throw up their hands and be like, "All right, cool, I'm going to do carpentry or something," to be able to turn around and not that carpentry's bad, just comparatively,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
To now be able to be in a place of that first 100 was just like what a road we've come from. Um, Yeah, just being able to be connected with those was a huge milestone for this. Being able to continue doing the thing that I love, which is music, and yeah, it's just been really crazy. Seeing music on TV for the first time that I've written with these wrestlers has been amazing. And some of it
Yeah.
I knew was coming, others of it I had no idea. So I'd be watching the TV show and I'm like, oh, look at that! Like that's cool. Masha's on TV today, and I was just like, yeah, those were things for me that were big milestones. Having my kid, who's almost 3 now, being able to watch TV, not know what he's seeing, but seeing my wife and I get excited, "Look at that, that's cool," and him just going, "Yeah," and then that's the only part that he watches because he's young. I don't want him watching violence right now, that kinda thing. But,
Yeah.
like, as he gets older, him being able to say, "My dad was on TV. That's cool," kind of, audio-wise. Like, that stuff was big milestones for me. So
Nice. Is there something that you wanna do next, that you're thinking about? Like, do you wanna expand beyond this, or are you really, like, comfortable right now and still developing? I mean, you said you're booked out till October. Are you leaving room for other creative projects, or is this, like, full everything for you?
would I love to do other projects? Absolutely. Would time afford me any space in real estate to do that whatsoever? Probably not right now, but,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm always open to speaking also because, as you know, with different projects, they could set like a video game usually takes so long to get from development to print. It could take a couple of years for a small game. So if a
yeah,
company comes to me and says, "Hey, we'd love to start working on music with this," and they set a good timeline, then I'm totally open to that. Same with film, same with commercials. But my goal is to continue to grow within the wrestling, within the wrestling landscape. I feel like there is a need for original music that wrestlers can use everywhere. And I'm really grateful to be able to serve that need. I would absolutely love to work with other people in these industries, like you said, film, video game, whatnot. So if anyone wants to, I'd love to work with them. But I really am loving the work that I'm doing now with the wrestlers. And if this
yeah,
is if this is the rock at which I build my castle, then I'm grateful to have a castle at all. So
yeah. Um, One of the things I've noticed is, like, really successful composers, um, have a thing. Like, you're in this world. There, another friend of mine does haunts and haunted houses and like theme park music. Um, if a young composer is thinking about how to build a career, it sounds like you kind of fell into it because you had a passion. Not maybe not fell into it. I think maybe, but like you had a passion, right?
yeah.
And that started it. Um, how can a young composer think about creating their way in the world? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think that and I'm actually talking to a student that I'm working with now. My wife and I run a music school here in Midland Park, New Jersey. And one of our students, which number one, first and foremost, before I answer the question, if you teach and you see your students doing amazing things, you're just like, dude, this is what it's about. Like I could give all the other stuff up today, and the fact of seeing them continue to and strive is just super cool to me. One student of mine is actually thinking about, okay, what's the next step for me once I graduate high school and go into college and want to do music professionally. One thing that I think really benefited me was speaking with one of my friends, Tina Guo. She is the cellist for Hans Zimmer, on top of like 40,000 other things. You could hear her speak all day about business, developing yourself as a musician. One thing that was beneficial for me was number one, learning how to perform a bunch of different styles. For me, you need to be versatile, especially as a composer, right?
Yeah.
The other thing, as just a musician in general, I think that, and again, I come from the music school background. I went to college for music. One thing I think that college is great for is for making you a phenomenal musician. You can basically sit down and do the thing. I think the one thing that music schools often leave out en masse, I'm not talking about Berkeley, I'm not talking about the more modern ones, but I think a lot of music schools leave out the fact that, hey, as a musician, the amount of grind that you're going to have to do is insane. And they
Yeah.
don't often talk about actually how to create a living as a musician. You have a lot of people who come out of music school and they're just like, great, I can play all the things. What now? And,
Yeah.
sometimes as a musician, you need to do a variety of things. You might need to perform live. You might need to do, like you're talking about, like compose and be able to figure out, okay, cool, how do I get my music ready for sync? How do I connect with directors? What conferences do I go to? You may teach, and some people who are musicians don't like teaching. Learn to love it because it's consistent and it's awesome.
Yeah.
So I think that as not just a composer, but any musician, seeing what you can do and learning all the different things you can do with it are going to help you create really strong streams of income and really great ways to develop yourself in the industry. And I give you the example that I'm talking about. I'm a music teacher with my wife. We run the piano workshop at Bergen County. I do the composition as well. So there's different things. There's so much out there that a musician can do, and quite frankly, may have to do in order
Yeah.
to survive just off of music alone. I think if there's something that you're passionate about, like you said, your friend does the haunted house, I do the wrestling themes. I think you can always have that as like a primary thing that you do and develop your specific sound around that, or your specific quote unquote niche around all the
Hmm.
other things that you do. But don't just isolate yourself to one thing. Obviously know that you have to do the wave of other things, but as
Yeah.
you're branding as an artist, you can continue to brand yourself in that way. If you like writing music for horror movies, then continue to write and continue to figure out, how do I get more horror movie gigs? How do I get more horror video game gigs? What conferences do I have to go to for not just music, but horror movies, right? You're a
Yeah.
composer. What festivals are out there where I can connect with directors? What festivals and conventions, we know from our podcasting industry, what conventions are there to connect maybe with even true crime podcasters? Podcasting is huge now. A lot of you know me from that life too. So there's so many different ways that you can leverage your skill set. But if you're thinking about really kind of being extremely niche, that niche will grow over time if you continue to pitch yourself as that. But don't just think that as a
Yeah.
musician, you only have to stick into that niche. You can branch out, do other things for the money side, help you survive. You'll also meet lots of great people networking wise, and then you can build as you go.
Okay. All right. That's awesome advice. Any final thoughts that you have?
Yeah, I will just say thank you to every wrestler who has decided to work with me, every promotion who continues to work with me. You allow me to put a roof over my head doing the work that I love to do. And I say that for any of the career paths that I'm in or have currently been in. But again, like, from that person in 2014 that thought this was it for music, to being able to be some trusted source and somebody that you go to, I can't appreciate that enough. So to everybody listening who I've worked with and will be working with in the future, thank you. For anybody who's considering getting into music and getting into composing, it's a really great opportunity and a great experience, no matter what vertical you decide to go into. So I always say, love music and do the best that you can. So
That's great. Well, thank you so much. I enjoyed kind of digging behind this side of things. It's an
absolutely.
industry that I see it. I kind of get a sense of what's going on, but knowing how one piece of it works always makes me happy. So I really
Absolutely.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
How can a wrestler get in touch with you? How can people get in touch with you if they want to learn a bit more about what you're working on, and
absolutely.
also like maybe work with you directly?
Yeah, if there are any wrestlers, directors, video game industry professionals who want to work with me on original music, you can find me at www.johnkieranmusic.com. If you are watching this, how my name is spelled right over here
Yep.
is exactly how you'd spell that, and the word music at the end. That's also my email, johnkieranmusic@gmail.com. Instagram and Facebook is at John Kiernan Music. Twitter is the outlier because of the 16-person character count or whatever. Jay Kiernan Guitar. And then you can find my music just by searching my name on Apple Music and Spotify. And there's playlists, there's artists, there's all this different stuff where you can find all the original themes that I've worked on.
All right. Well, very good. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Talk to you later.